we're going to start doing here is we're going to take a look at some passages we may or may not be familiar with. I think more than likely we've seen these passages before. Rather than reading them and understanding them from a Western perspective, we're going to go back, look at some of the Hebrew words that are in those verses to try and understand it so that we can read it through Hebrew eyes. And I'm going to throw up here the standard translation first. So God created man in His own image. Okay, we've all heard that before. Genesis 1:27. Bereshit 1:27. In the Hebrew, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam betzalmo. Now, so God created man in His own image, a good translation of this Hebrew? Well, let's take a look. Let's start with the first one. And in the blue here is what we're looking at. It's the prefix that just means and. Okay, the next one is the yod means he. The next one is our word bara. Bara. Where else is this word used? We've talked about it already. Bereshit 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohimet. What does the word bara mean? First question I asked you was, what is create one of the question I asked earlier is, just create an abstract or a concrete? I think you all agree it's an abstract. It's a pure abstract. You can't draw a picture of create. You can't think it. I mean, you can't smell it. You can't hear it. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what does that word really mean then? Well, one of the best ways to do that is to go through the Tanakh and look for other places where it talks about or uses this word. Just recently in the Torah readings, we had Joseph's dream where he had the 7 fat cows. That word there is the same word as this one. It's the same word, bara. All right, so we got vayivra means and he fattened. It can also, by extension, mean to fill up. Okay, we used to raise some livestock, goats, and when you wanted to fatten them up, you'd put them in a pen, give them a whole bunch of food, good grain, good alfalfa, fatten them up, get that meat nice and meaty and tasty. You fill them up. Well, that word fat there is the same word. The translators, they like to fix the text for you so it makes sense. And if it's okay to say fat, and it fits the context and with you as a reader, and you'll understand that, they'll translate the word bara as fat. But you go to Genesis 1:1, they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. God fattened things up? That doesn't. Let's go to the Latin and see what it says. Oh, well, that makes more sense. He created it. The translators relied heavily on the Latin Vulgate and the Greek Septuagint, unfortunately, which meant that they kind of put the Hebrew as second class. So anyway, we get bara now as created. Well, let me ask you this. What does create mean in our normal understanding? Out of nothing. It means to make something out of nothing. So what this is saying in this verse, if what is translated correctly is that God made Adam out of nothing. Is that true? No. Made him out of dirt. Genesis 2:7. He yatzad, who formed him out of the dust of the ground. So create, the word bara cannot mean ex nihilo, even though that's what the Latin Vulgate has. But the word bara means to fatten up. Take a look at the next word here. We have the word Eloah, singular word, and it's usually translated as a God, either with a capital G or a small g. By the way, there's no capital letters in Hebrew. Okay, so when you open your English translation, you see capital L, capital O, capital O, R, B. There's no capital letters in Hebrew. Eloah, literally, it comes from the root Allah. Allah. Okay, Allah, same word. It's a Semitic word used by Hebrew as well as the Ishmaelites and the Muslims. It's the same word. Allah, literally in the Hebrew anyway, what it means is to be yoked to another person. Okay, remember the oxen that we were talking about plowing before, plowing towards a mark? They would take the 2 oxen and put a yoke between them. We're going to talk more about this yoke, because this is an important concept in Hebrew. But they would yoke these 2 together. And this Allah can mean an oath. And the oath is the yoke that if I make an oath with someone, I'm binding myself to that person and creating a yoke. Okay, so this word Allah means to yoke to another. But Eloah is one who yokes to another, and which is translated as God. But understand it as one who is yoked to you, the one who's yoked to you. Okay, and then here, this is the plural form, Elohim. Eloah is singular, Elohim is plural. Now, Elohim is sometimes translated as God with a capital G, or is translated as gods with a small g. Now, in this case, can we tell, is it gods or a God? One big God. Can we tell by this? It has to be understood as a singular. Now, we know that this is talking about a singular, not more than one God, gods, because of the verb. Remember I was talking about the word avar in our other verse? It's a first person or third person masculine singular. He. This is he filled. So we have to understand Elohim as a singular, not a more than one. Okay, I knew I was going to have to do that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is there are people out there who are saying in Genesis 1:1 it was gods or angels that created the heavens and the earth. There are a lot of people out there teaching that. That's impossible. Because it's the same word. It's also, Genesis 1:1 says, Bereshit bara. Bara is the third person masculine singular. He created, or he bara. This is the same thing. It's third person masculine singular. He bara. Does that make sense? Did you get that? So we know that Elohim should be translated as God, not gods.